Hello everyone, Sandi here. I am finally back with the 11th episode of exploring the Enchanted Forest, where we go through and study each card in the Forest of Enchantment Tarot by Linnea Weatherstone and Mirella Allwood, and compare it to the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith deck. The deck I'm using in this study is the Tarot of A.E. Waite, because the little white book has been written by none other than Rachel Pollock. So, in this episode, we are going to go through the pages and the knights, which are the children or the child and the seeker in the Forest of Enchantment Tarot. Let's jump straight in. I just want to say that if you do want to start this from the beginning, then I will link the playlist for this deep dive series down below. Here we go. Court card. Forest folk. People cards. Traditionally, each suit in the minor arcana has 4 court cards with names like page, knight, queen, and king. These are usually seen as a hierarchy, each card more powerful than the one before it, with the king on top. This deck tosses out the royal court and the hierarchy and renames these cards as child, seeker, weaver, and keeper, respectively. When people cards come up in a reading, they can be interpreted as representing a particular person based on personality traits or on the role that person is playing in a situation. This could be you or someone else. If it doesn't seem to represent an actual person, a people card can simply illustrate an approach to a situation or the energy brought to bear. Questions that can be answered by people cards include: what role am I playing here? How am I perceived by others? How should I approach this problem? What part of myself am I neglecting? What part of myself am I indulging? Each of these cards depict multifaceted characters. None of us is just one thing. Always friendly, always cranky, always brave. Some character traits are listed for each person, along with some shadow traits, flaws, faults, and other unpleasant attributes. You could consider the traits listed for the forest folk like an introduction party at a party. I'd like you to meet the Weaver of Visions. She is a shapeshifter. It's just the beginning of your relationship with the people of the Forest of Enchantment. On gender, the child and seeker cards are a mix of male and female, 2 of each. The weavers are female and the keepers are male. These gender assignments can help you identify particular people in your reading, but all of the forest folk cards can represent any gender choice. For example, the Weaver of Challenges can represent an intellectually imposing woman, but she might remind you of your Uncle George. It is the qualities and energies that matter. Alright, so now we've got that little introduction to court cards out of the way, or folk cards, I suppose. So, moving on to the child. The child cards represent a youthful approach to the world. There is a bounce-back quality to the child, an ability to learn life's lessons more readily than other older folk, who have a harder time getting back up if they fall. Children are changing all the time rather than being set in their ways, and they tend to get into predicaments more than the other people cards. Some are careless, some foolhardy, and some are just curious. Child cards signify anyone who exemplifies these qualities, regardless of age, a young person or a person who is young at heart. Okay, So, starting off with Child of Spells, and I have decided to do this episode a little bit differently. We are going to take a random card here to keep as a bookmark while I talk about the cards, because I felt that there was so much glare in the book. And we are going to talk about the Child of Spells and the Page of Wands, respectively. So, let's look at the Child of Spells and the Page of Wands. So here we've got, in the traditional card, we have a young-looking person holding a large wand, kind of like a walking stick. It looks like they are examining it quite thoroughly, like almost like they're studying it, inspecting it to decide if this is going to be a good walking stick or something. They seem to be standing in some kind of desert, and they are wearing a robe with salamanders on them, representing the element of fire. So we have all kinds of, dry sands. Desert is warm, hot even. We've got these red-orangey trousers. The hem here, or the lapel, can you call that? The edge of the boots almost look like flames. And we also have this red feather in the hat that can also kind of look like a flame. So, yeah, we have a lot of different nods towards the element of fire here, which is the correspondence to the wand's suit. So, if we then take a look at the Child of Spells, we have a completely different approach here. First of all, the page has become the child, and as we know already by this point, the spells are equal to the wands. But here we don't see any specific nods to fire that I can see, except for maybe this ginger hair here on the little child, and they seem to be casting some kind of spell on this little rabbit here. We see sparkles of magic coming from the wand. If we look really closely as well, we see a little acorn there on the wand that's attached to it, and it looks like a pine cone at the edge, like very end tip of the wand. And above this child we have a canopy of oak leaves. Beautiful green card. I really love this depiction of the Child of Spells. It just reminds me so much of myself playing in the woods when I was a kid, running around with wooden sticks as wands and, hoping to see a rabbit or two. So yeah, let's read what the guidebook has to say about the Child of Spells. Child of Spells. The Child of Spells has marched boldly into the forest to try out his homemade magic staff. He wants to be a wizard, but he isn't very interested in putting in the study time. In his mind, he is ready right now. Planting his feet firmly and focusing energy through the staff, as he's seen real wizards do, he attempts to magically transform a rabbit. The rabbit isn't worried at all. If this card does not represent a particular person, it can mean an audacious attempt as a well-meaning mistake or childlike enthusiasm for a project or a plan. Character traits: playful, enthusiastic, curious, brave, a risk taker, funny and waggish, doesn't give up easily, learns by trial and error. Shadow traits: naughtiness, bravado, acts before he thinks, won't accept responsibility for his actions, unreliable, easily distracted. Okay. Let's then have a look at what the other little guidebook says about the Page of Wands. A jaunty, rather feminine page stands in a desert. Are they pyramids or simply sand dunes? Where he tilts back his head as he holds his wand firmly, if a bit awkwardly. In general, the pages approach the great challenges of crisis and change with eagerness and excitement. This becomes especially true for fiery wands, and this card encourages us to see life's challenges, even danger, as opportunity. Experience, knowledge, even skill are not necessary, only openness and desire. Traditional divination describes pages as messengers. The message of fire tells us to take on life's problems without worry about the likelihood of success. Another divinatory tradition sees this page's message as about love, perhaps an email or Facebook message. The circular lizards on the page's tunic are salamanders, the elemental animal of fire, found also on the knight and king. With most, the tails do not touch the mouths, symbolizing incompletion. Oh. Divinatory meanings: eagerness, excitement, a young attitude to challenges, messages possibly of love. All right. So we get more of a kind of a divinatory stance here in the little white book. The guidebook for the Forest of Enchantment are talking more about characteristics of the character in the court card. But they both do seem to, allude to the playfulness of the page, or rather kind of the excitement and then like enthusiasm of the two. I like how Rachel Pollack has also brought in the part of the messenger here and talking about different traditions. I wish that I probably should read her bigger book, but where she mentions different traditional divinations systems. But yeah, they both kind of come off as risk takers and having a kind of young and naive attitude towards taking on a challenge. Which I kind of also, that's what Rachel wrote here in the little guidebook, and that's kind of what we see here in this card as well. He just feels that, he doesn't need to train. He already knows how to be a wizard, so he goes out and he just does it. So it's like, feeling overly confident and rushing out and doing things before you are ready. I feel like these both very much work. They have their different approaches, but I definitely see the Page of Wands, Child of Spells in both of them, and it's like I like this, that we get a different approach and a different way of looking at the Page of Wands. As well, and I really love it when there are children as the pages. That's one of my absolute favorite things. So that the fact that they are called children or child instead of page just works really well for me. So let's move along. Next up we have the Child of Visions and Page of Cups. Page of Cups, one of my favorites. I've always liked this little funny depiction of this young person standing here all jauntily with the fish in his cup. I don't know, I've always felt really drawn to this image. But as you can see here, we have a page with a cup in his hand. Sorry, I'm going to try and stay in focus. we see here a young person again dressed in very like colorful clothing. We have this blue tunic here with what looks to be like lotus flowers, and this pinkish reddish shirt and tights. We've got these wavy water here in the background, and of course they are holding the traditional cup with a little fish poking out to say hello, and they seem to be having some kind of conversation going on here. Love it. Then we have the Child of Visions, and we see this young girl running through the forest in the rain. She is happy and seems to be really enjoying herself. We also see this little spider web here that is full of water droplets, and she seems to just be running straight into or around in the forest, not really paying any mind to, whatever dangers might be lurking around the next tree. We also see a little chain of daisies hanging here from her belt, which is just super lovely. So yeah, let's read from the guidebook. Child of Visions. The Child of Visions has been abandoned in the forest. Oh no! The woods look scary and forbidding to us, but not to her. Everything she sees is viewed through a rosy filter of the light. Her world holds only beauty and goodness, no matter the situation. Her trusting nature expects everyone to be a friend and every story to end with a happily ever after. Her emotions are near the surface, and when her tears do fall, they pass as quickly as a summer storm. Oh, look how the raindrops sparkle like diamonds on that spider's web. If this card does not represent a particular person, it can mean a time of increasing harmony, a gift of beauty, or a quarrel forgiven. Character traits: gentle, emotionally sensitive, appreciation for beauty, wonder, innocence, Pollyanna optimism. Shadow traits: naive, emotionally vulnerable, unrealistic, oversensitive, easily fooled. There is potential for great disappointment. Okay. And from the little white book. The Page of Cups. This delightful picture continues the fairy tale quality seen in a number of the Cups cards. A jaunty young man, his tunic decorated with lotus flowers, smiles as he looks at a fish who half emerges from his cup. The fish's mouth appears open, and we can imagine it actually talking to the page, promising to grant him 3 wishes or revealing mysteries. The Cups court cards show us a quest to bring spiritual healing of the Grail to a world moving through upheavals. The page does not leave on a quest like the knight, or create like the queen, or govern like the king. Instead, he provides a sense of magic and wonder. And maybe, just maybe, a magical talking fish exists and will appear to us if we do the right thing. The idea of animal allies appears in every culture except one, the mechanistic world of industrial society. Maybe this card signifies the return of an older and deeper world. Divinatory meanings: fascination, magic, a young person, gentle and imaginative. Great. All right, so again, we do see kind of the same you get the same feeling from these descriptions, at least I do. We have the gentleness, the emotionally sensitive, the water moving in these cards with the rain and the water behind the person here, as well as the presumed water in the cup with the fish in it. But we also have, you know, the wonder, the fascination, the magic in both of these cards. We have the very interesting insights in the little white book about returning to an older and deeper world, which was quite interesting. But yes, we do have this optimism, innocence, wonder, as well as the shadowy side of the card, which is, you know, sensitivity, oversensitivity, and easily like naivete, as well as you know, kind of a blue-eyed quality here, where you can be easily hoodwinked and again, a person who doesn't quite think things through. It's kind of like the overarching theme for the pages, really. You know, an inexperienced person not having thought things through, but the positivity of that being that you also go headfirst into things for better or for worse. I really, really do love the Page of Cups, the Child of Visions. I think I might identify quite a lot with them, and that's probably why. But yes, that was the Page of Cups and the Child of Visions. Next up, we are having Page of Swords and Child of Challenges. Okay, so here we've got another young-looking person, but this person looks ready for a fight, or like they are standing on some kind of hill, practicing their sword skills. We see these large clouds and birds, these birds in the sky, and the sky kind of looks like there's a lot of wind. We also see this tree here that we can see the branches are, and also the hair of the person here who seems to be flying in the wind, so we can literally feel the wind in this card, which is the element of the swords in the Rider-Waite-Smith tradition. And yes, I definitely see some kind of determination here in this face, a lot of thoughts and determination as they are swinging their sword. And looking at the Child of Challenges, we instead see this young girl, I presume, sitting in the forest with a very thoughtful demeanor here, sitting down with her hand to her chin, looking out. We see birds or maybe bats up here in the trees as well, and some ivy climbing up the tree stem here. What else can we see? I don't see anything in particular. There's probably some kind of specific plant in the back here, maybe. It looks almost like poison ivy or something. Yeah, but anyway, we don't see the element of air as strongly as in the Page of Swords here, but we do have more of a clearing in the forest. We see more sky, and it looks like some kind of mist in the background almost. So you get more of an airy feel overall, even though you're in the middle of the forest. So let's read the guidebook. Child of Challenges. The Child of Challenges is lost in the woods. She doesn't waste time berating herself or others for this predicament, nor does she indulge in tears or panic. She takes a deep breath, finds a dry place to sit, and considers her options. She knows that 5 minutes spent thinking things through are far better than 5 minutes of running wildly in all directions. She remains calm and alert, mentally retracing her steps. If this card does not represent a particular person, it can mean the approach of a more difficult time and a need to plan and prepare. Character traits: cleverness, quickness of mind, ability to focus, love of learning, fondness for study, good in an emergency, honest. Shadow traits: a tendency to overthink and obsess, argumentative, very argumentative, always knows best, sets impossible standards for herself, and can be tactless. Okay. So immediately I see some differences here between the previous pages. I'm going to discuss that in a little bit. Let's just read the little guidebook for the Page of Swords as well. The Swords Court cards show the struggle to direct mental energy to productive purpose. The mind can turn negative when it sees every possibility. In general, the courts are figures of ever-increasing responsibility. From the mostly carefree pages to the active knights, to the ruling queens and kings. This becomes a special problem for the suit of mind, the most unfocused of the elements. The page shows this difficulty of focus by moving forwards while facing backwards, as if, like so many of the numbered swords cards, he cannot let go of the past. Ooh, that's interesting. At the same time, pages carry the least responsibility of the four courts. And so we see him standing lightly and yet alert as he holds up his sword. As the old expression goes, his head is in the clouds, unconnected to daily life. Maybe he looks back to his last day of freedom before he must be a knight. Or become a knight, sorry. Divinatory meanings: wariness, alertness, looking back to the past while moving forward. Okay, so here we have quite a different interpretation of the two cards. So Rachel here describes the Page of Swords as very unfocused and having their head in the clouds, being wary and alert, but looking back to the past while moving forward. So basically unfocused, not facing the goal. Very interesting, actually, that she describes the swords as the most unfocused. Wow. All right. So this is very productive for me to go through now, actually, because it's really giving me some more perspective here on the swords as well. Conversely, at the Child of Challenges, we have a person who sits down to think things through, who's not being rash or running into more trouble. They are looking at things, making a decision, being very clever, quick of mind, ability to focus. So we have two very different interpretations of the Page of Swords, Child of Challenges here. Unfocused, focused, head in clouds, cleverness and quickness of mind, fondness of study, honesty. Very interesting, actually, and a little bit confusing, if I'm being honest. Then we also have the fact that, obviously she's a child of challenges, and I said earlier that's what I was going to discuss, how it seems like the pages or the children overall in the court cards have this character trait of being a bit rash, and I was going to say, even though it says here that they are not very, that they are focused and taking time to consider options and stuff like that. I still think, you know, the fact that this child is lost in the first place kind of speaks to the rashness of the character, because a truly non-rash person, or a truly a person who truly plans and makes works things out, would probably not get lost in the first place, because they would have a map and a compass with them. However, it is easy to get lost either way, in an enchanted forest nonetheless. So yeah, a little bit of conflicting information here that I'm fascinated by, actually. How it's so different here as well. But I do see what Rachel means, that the person here is looking backwards while their feet are pointing forwards, and they're not looking at where they are keeping their sword. I read it as they were studying their, sword skills, because I also have been and do read the swords suit as study and diligence, as well as thoughts and mind. But yeah, it's really put me for a spin that Rachel wrote this about the Page of Swords, that they are unfocused and unwilling to move forward, or like unwilling to let go of the past, is also quite interesting. Let me know what you think about this little contradiction going on here. Super interesting. But we need to move along, so that we don't sit here all too long. So the last of the pages, we have Page of Pentacles and Child of Boons. Let's use the zoom this time, shall we? Here we go. So, in the Page of Pentacles, we have this young person standing in a flowery field. We see some kind of almost like field that's been ploughed here in the background. We see some green trees, a very yellow sky, and they are venerably holding up this pentacle here that they are studying quite intently. Yeah, seems like a very, a cloudless day. Seems very stable, very, very fortunate, actually, looking at this card. Then, if we take a look at the Child of Boons, we see here a scene that seems to be almost taken straight out of a Hansel and Gretel book. We see a child approaching a gingerbread house full of candies and sugar windows, sugar glazed windows. And in the background here, we actually see a rowan tree, which I think is quite interesting. We also see, I don't know if you can see this unless I pick it up, we also see this little bird here on the top of the roof, or on top of the roof. And we see this child reaching out as if they are about to break off a little piece off of the gingerbread house. So, let's look at the guidebook. Child of Boons. The lost and hungry Child of Boons can't believe his luck when he comes upon a house made of gingerbread. There doesn't seem to be anyone around to forbid him, but still he hesitates before breaking off a piece. He tries to remember what he's been taught about the proper procedure for magic cottages. The practical thing would seem to be to stay alive while awaiting rescue. So, does that mean eat or not eat? If this card does not represent a particular person, it can mean a time of study, an impetuous investment, or a sign that it is time to pay more attention to material security and prosperity. Character traits: considerate, cautious, obedient, and well-mannered. Quiet, bashful, wants to help but must be supervised. Shadow traits: inexperience in earthly practicalities, can't manage money, expects others to care for him, doesn't always tell the truth. Alright. No mention of the rowan tree here or the bird. So let's read from the little guidebook. Page of Pentacles. He walks slowly through green fields, his pentacle held up before him. If we put this card together with the ace, we can imagine a sort of fairy tale in which a poor young man sees a ghostly hand offer him a magic star that will heal the world after a cataclysm. Where will he go with it, and how will he use it? The energy is strong, and as a young page, he has to hold it on his fingertips, because pentacles represent the earth and such issues as work and money. Sometimes we think of them as dull, but this card reminds us that ultimately the pentacle is the strongest, most mystical of all the tools on the magician's table. In traditional fortune telling, the pages are messengers. This page brings the message of restoration and magic. Pages are also called the students. And here we see the model of someone fascinated by what he studies, with no concern for practical matters beyond this subject. Divinatory meanings: fascination, hope, a dedicated student, especially of magic. Again, very different approaches here to the Page of Pentacles versus the Child of Boons. But we also do need to remember that they did decide to go a different way with the core cards in the Forest of Enchantment. So the Child of Boons, we have these character traits about being considerate and cautious and obedient and well-mannered. Maybe because of the child perspective, we have, needs to be supervised, doesn't always tell the truth. We have these childlike characteristics with the Page of Pentacles, or the Child of Boons, sorry. The Page of Pentacles, on the other side, is describing this very fastidious person, strong and young and dedicated student who has a very stable ability to focus on what they want and at the same time being a student of magic, a strong person in their wants and wills, very different approaches, different feels altogether here. Although they are facing the same thing, he's reaching for this gingerbread house. He's holding this pentacle. It's all kind of green and lush around them. Another thing that I noticed also about the children here in the Forest of Enchantment, they are all either lost or run away or abandoned, and the Child of Spells ran away to try and be so it's children on their own. This one ran away to try and be a magician or a wizard. This one was abandoned. This one got lost in the woods, as well as the Child of Boon also got lost. So they are all kind of lost children and abandoned children in the forest. Whereas we in the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith have these young men, kind of students to become knights. That's something to also kind of take in consideration in the difference of how you read between these two decks. And also, you know, the reason why we like to have so many decks, because we don't always want to read from the one and only perspective of the Rider-Waite-Smith tradition. Maybe this is also based on the Rider-Waite-Smith tradition, but we have a different lens, a different perspective, and a different, you know, starting point to look out for. A different viewpoint is what I'm trying to say. Okay, so that was the children and the pages. Let's now move along to the knights. The knights in the Forest of Enchantment are called seekers. So, seekers enter the Forest of Enchantment on their own initiative. No one has chased them there or abandoned them, as may have happened with the child cards. Each has a quest to fulfill, and the quality of action is common to all four seekers. Their individual traits are more distinct than the children's, who are more nebulous and mutable. By the time someone becomes a seeker, their personality is fairly settled, but they are still learning and evolving. Their faults can be still overcome. So, starting out with the Knight of Wands and the Seeker of Spells. Here we see a knight on his steed, again with the salamanders on the clothing here, and as Rachel pointed out in her little white book with the page, the salamanders are not biting their tail. In most cases, we have a few down here that are basically biting their tails, but the rest of them are not. Again, we have this fiery feel here with the plumage in the helmet, and he's holding his wand. The horse itself as well looks very passionate, like he's running for it quite aggressively. Yeah, they are charging towards something. And then when we look at the Seeker of Spells, we have a much more quieter and calmer approach here. We see this young woman with a torch in her hand, and we also have here, she seems to be finding or looking for, seeking for this magical flower here. Kind of gives me a little bit of Tangled vibes, you know, how the stepmother looks for the flower of youth or something. If we look here as well in the background, we have a little fox that has followed her here into this little clearing, and we seem to be having a curtain of ivy here as well. And she seems to have found what she is looking for, and we see also a little sickle here in her belt, signifying maybe that she is here to harvest this flower. Okay. Reading from the guidebook, Seeker of Spells. The Seeker of Spells has come to the woods in secret to find a flower that only blooms on this one night. As a witch, she has no fear of the nocturnal forest. Indeed, the danger only makes her quest more thrilling. Her daring has paid off, and she arrives at the precise moment of the blossom's unfurling. That too is thrilling. To run the risk of missing the moment and losing the magic, playing it safe, is for those with no witch blood in their veins. If this card doesn't represent a particular person, it can mean creative exploration, trusting your instincts in terms of timing, breaking through a stale routine, or spontaneous travel without a great deal of planning. Character traits: bold, spirited, dramatic, venturesome, fearless, passionate in her pursuits. shadow traits, impulsive, would rather apologize than ask permission, easily bored, headstrong, and willful. And reading from the little guidebook for the Page of Wands. Sorry, the Knight of Wands. As described in the introduction, we can look at court cards as themselves a book of changes, not so much a tool to identify other people, but rather a shifting kaleidoscope of ways we face great challenges. Here we see the power of adventure and animal energy. People sometimes look at this card and assume the horse is charging ahead. In fact, like the Pentacles horse, it doesn't go anywhere. But unlike that solid horse, this one rears up, as if unable to contain its power. The knight's plume and the ends of fabric on his tunic take the form of flames. This is the way of adventure, a desire to take on life. Where others may see crisis or disaster, he might see a chance for action. He does not temper his knightly energy with cups' empathy or swords' heroic dedication or pentacles' responsibility. For the Knight of Wands, the adventure is all that matters. Divinatory meanings: excitement, energy, confidence that sees danger as opportunity. All right. So we do have some kind of we do have similarities in these cards, at least in the descriptions, as they are both spirited and kind of dramatic and ready for adventure. Really fun to see that she describes as well that the horse is rearing up and not charging ahead. Something that I think is easily misinterpreted because of it looking like the tunic here and the plumage is kind of like blowing in the wind behind them from the wind resistance of the horse charging ahead. But no matter how you read it, I think it works either way. Charging ahead or rearing up, I think they both kind of portray power and eagerness and an energy of rushing into things, which is, what I feel the Knight of Wands kind of represents, at least according to these two books. We do also have hang on. We do also have animal energy here in both the cards, with the horse here and the fox here in the background, which I really like. Of course, we have flames represented in both cards as well. But basically, we both see people taking a risk for adventure and being adventurous. And here we see the dedication as well, where they venture out in the forest at night, at a specific night as well, just for this one magical flower here. So yeah, I think it works. Moving right along to the Knight of Cups and the Seeker of Visions. Here we see a slowly walking horse with this knight on top of it. He's got wings on his helmet, as well as on his feet, and we've got a tunic here with fishes. Let me move closer. We've got fishes on the tunic, but no fish in the cup this time. The horse here is white with the blue details on the saddle and the bridle, and they are walking here along or towards this river, representing the water element for the cups. Here in the Seeker of Visions, we see a young man emotionally playing this harp in this forest clearing. We see here some birch trees in the background, and this is one of the lighter cards, I think, in the deck, where we see where it's mostly leafy trees. We see the sunshine coming through the trees. We have some blue butterflies. Oh, focus. Some blue butterflies up there in the background. We see some flowers here, blue flowers. And the seeker seems to be kneeling here by this little source of water that's shimmering with a kind of magical mist. So, going to the guidebook. Seeker of Visions. The Seeker of Vision returns every day to this forest lake where once he caught sight of a woman more beautiful than his most beautiful dreams. From that moment on, his heart was in thrall, dazzled by sunlight on the water and confused by mist that rose as if by magic. It seemed to him that she transformed herself into a fish and disappeared below the surface of the lake. He plays his harp and sings with the voice of an angel, hoping to lure her back, hoping for one more glimpse of the glimmering girl who captured his imagination. If this card doesn't represent a particular person, it can mean unrequited love, a sense of spiritual purpose, or a desire for a more artistic life. Character traits: idealistic, romantic, visionary, poetic, gallant, follow his heart, Prince Charming. Shadow traits: a seducer, doesn't commit in relationships, unrealistic understanding of love, prone to flights of quixotic fancy, not grounded in reality. And for the Knight of Cups, we have: the dreamy, slow-moving knight holds the great quest object, the Holy Grail, container of the spiritual force that can heal the wasteland and bring new life to the world. The horse seems to move through desert lands, while across the stream we see trees, as if the healing has begun. Thus, we can see this card as a promise of salvation and the bearer of that salvation. Except, notice how slow everything seems, without urgency. Many have found a self-absorbed quality in this knight. Traditionally, cups is the suit of love, and thus the knight becomes a figure of romance. Many, however, find him too caught up in his own dreams. He holds up the cup. Does he want to offer it or just stare at it, fascinated? Here is a question you might ask yourself or the questioner when this card appears. Has the knight fulfilled his quest? Is he returning with the grail, or is he still on his journey? Divinatory meanings: someone on a spiritual quest, a bringer of healing, a dreamy lover. All right, so we do have similarities here again. We both have kind of a slowness of pace, like a slowness of pace in the feel of these cards, is what I'm trying to say. We have here the color blue quite prominent also in both of the cards. We also have more of a romantic view of the cups, or the Knight of Cups here in the Seeker of Visions, where we have this idealistic and romantic person who is trying to serenade this young woman that he just caught a glimpse of, that he thinks has transformed into a fish. It's a very kind of romantic, fairy tale-like description of the Knight of Cups. Then we have, Seeker of Visions. Then we have the Knight of Cups, who is on a mission, you know, then presumably from his king or queen, to find the Holy Grail, which he then seems to have found in the cup that he is holding. But as they talk in the guidebook, or they wrote in the guidebook, you can't really know. Is he still on his quest? Is he walking towards to show off his finds, or what's actually happening here? He doesn't seem to be in any kind of hurry. But yes, more of an emotional feel here than here. You know, having said that, with the water element and the emotional aspect that comes with that. However, I am sure that if you try hard enough, you will see some emotion in this Knight of Cups here as well. But yeah, I don't think I have anything else at the moment to say about these cards. So let's move along. Right, next up we have the Knight of Swords and the Seeker of Challenges, and this card always makes me chuckle a little bit. Any Monty Python fans here will know that in the film The Holy Grail, we have the Dark Knight that they meet in the forest, and this one just always reminds me of that character in that film. So, but back to tarot. Before we start though, I can definitely see the difference here. If we just quickly look at the Knight of Wands and the Knight of Swords, we definitely see here that this horse is more rearing than running. I haven't actually, I don't think, ever had these two side by side to compare like this, but we can definitely see that this Knight of Swords horse is definitely charging more than this Knight of Wands, and I can definitely now see that this horse is rearing up and not charging like this one here. All right, so Knight of Swords, we see this charging knight, quite angry looking actually, if we pick up the card to look at his face a bit closer. He looks quite angry, quite determined, ready to swing that sword into someone, it feels like. We also see again the wind here in this card. We see the jagged clouds, we see the trees bending in the wind, and he is running towards the wind, like in opposite directions of the wind. So he's got the wind in his face. And yes, angry with pointy boots, and I can't really see what there is on the... Are there birds? I think there are birds on the tunic. Yes. Those are definitely birds on the tunic there. Did we have birds on the... Oh, well, yeah, we did have birds on the Page of Swords as well, but in the sky, not on the tunic. Okay, and then looking at the Seeker of Challenges, we have here a dark dressed knight in black with a shield with a raven or a crow on it. We also see his black steed here in the background, and judging from the branches and the trees that are surrounding them, they are in a very old and dark part of the woods. Seems ready for battle. He stands there seemingly guarding something. Again, just seeing he's standing in the way for any people who want to come past, and that's exactly what the Dark Knight in the Holy Grail, Monty Python's Holy Grail does. So Let's zoom us out again and look in the guidebook. Alright, Seeker of Challenges. An enormous knight stands immovably on the forest path. The white raven blazoned on his shield and the iron feathers on his black armor declare him to be the Seeker of Challenges. His helm conceals his face, but the sword in his hand and the readiness of his stance speak of menace. His war horse dances with impatience at a safe distance from the proposed battle. The Seeker of Challenges is not going to let you pass. He is spoiling for a fight, determined to find trouble or make it himself. If this card does not represent a particular person, it could indicate a situation that has reached an impasse, a breakdown in diplomacy, or a movement toward war. Character traits: aggressive, forceful, skilled at confrontation, sharp-witted, sardonic, loyal in the martial sense, can't be bribed. Shadow traits: quarrelsome, ruthless in the attainment of his goals, belligerent, hot-tempered, attacks with no warning, must win at all costs. I'm sorry, but both the character traits and the shadow traits seem to be quite, negative all around. Again, forceful, yeah. Sharp-witted, I suppose, is quite a good trait, but the rest of them seems very, very negative in my opinion, which is quite funny. Anyway, the Knight of Swords. A heroic figure charges forward, visor up so we can see his fierce expression. He raises his sword high above his head, tilted forward in a commitment to aggressive action. This is the only horse that gallops, the way a knight's steed is meant to do. The trees on the left behind bends towards him, which means he is charging into a storm. The horse seems to look back up at him as if it questions his recklessness, but it obeys its master's command. The horse symbolizes the animal instinct of survival, the knight the heroic consciousness that overrides all doubts. Waite, the deck's designer, referred to him as Sir Galahad, the image of the knightly ideal of courage and dedication, and yet he appears focused on battle and swift action, lacking cups in a vision or one's love of adventure for its own sake, or pentacles' steady devotion. Creating a new world requires courage and a willingness to fight all the enemies of the new community, but other qualities are necessary as well. Divinatory meanings: courage, heroism, single-mindedness, possible recklessness. Alright, so we do both have quite similar character traits here between these two. We have aggressiveness and ruthlessness, possible recklessness, it says here as well. We have two people ready for a fight. Both portraying a very aggressive and kind of dark-minded expression here. What else can I say? Skill at confrontation. So we do have two cards here that both kind of express, the willingness to fight, but also maybe like, just like they wrote here, spoiling for a fight. They are looking for a fight. They're not trying to avoid it. They're just charging in, trying to pick a fight with with people. And we also have, and I think, you could also argue, being skilled at confrontation, this is where they feel that they shine. So they look out these situations so that they can feel, good about themselves. That's maybe one way of looking at the Knight of Swords. So yeah, I feel like this was a very short one, but I also don't really know what else there is to say. They are quite similar in that sense, except for the fact that this knight has already dismounted his steed and is standing there ready to take you on, basically. Okay, so now we are on to the last card for this episode, and that is the Knight of Pentacles and the Seeker of Boons. Oh, a little bit too close. There we go. So here we have the Knight of Pentacles sitting on this big, sturdy black steed. They are standing in a field. What it looks like. Again, with the yellow background, the same kind of background we had in the page of Pentacles. He is holding the pentacle in his hand a bit more steadily, not just on the fingertips. We see both in the mane of the horse and in the helmet of the knight something that looks almost like oak leaves. You see there? And what else? We also seem to have... Yes, well, they seem to be just standing there very steadily. There's no wind that we can see, no birds in the sky. Just a very calm moment. Looking at the Seeker of Boons, we have this woman that looks so much like a hobbit. I love it so much. This woman walking around in the forest, clearly foraging. She's got her walking stick, she's got her water pouch and her tools hanging in her belt, and a crystal around her neck. We also see this green lovely cape that she's got on here, and these utility boots, very practical boots for foraging in the forest. We see this moth or butterfly here on the tree, as well as the shining crystals that she seems to be here to forage. Yeah. Other than that, she's in a very lush looking part of the forest, very green all around, lots of moss also growing on the tree here. Gorgeous, gorgeous card. So, reading from the guidebook for the last time in this episode. Seeker of Boons. The Seeker of Boons has set out on a treasure hunt to a part of the forest where, rumor has it, precious gemstones can be found. She takes her time, searching carefully and methodically. Her quests are well planned, and she always wears her trusty belt of tools and good stout boots. The ground here is thick with gnarled roots, so she needs to move slowly, but that's what she likes best anyway. If this card doesn't represent a particular person, it can mean a need to slow down and pay attention to details, lest you miss something important. It can also offer reassurance that even though a desired outcome hasn't arrived yet, you're on the right track. Character traits: good humor, steadiness, dependability, practical and patient, earthy, adventurous, in a modest way. Shadow traits: a worrier. A worrier takes on too much, hard to roust out of habits, can be a bit plodding. Gosh, this sounds like me all through and through. Alright, Knight of Pentacles. He is the only knight whose horse does not move. The one's horse rears up. Cups go slowly as in a dream. Swords gallops. But this black steed stands in place, head up, alert, but unmoving on a small hilltop. Beyond them lie the ploughed fields of the new community. Modern tarot tradition usually sees him as hardworking, dedicated, and maybe a bit dull. The sort who won't take a vacation because he'd fall too far behind. But if we see the pentacles as the creation of a new world, one that will endure and become stable, then the knight becomes its perfect guardian. The fact that he doesn't ride off seeking battles or dragons to slay, does not look for romance with a fair lady, means that people can count on him. We might imagine a community grown up around him, forgetting almost that he is there, but safe because his pentacle protects them. Divinatory meanings: dedicated, hardworking, a protector, someone to be counted on. Right, so here we do have quite a difference again in the interpretations of the Knight of Pentacles versus the Seeker of Boons. The Knight of Pentacles is seen as this protector, this guardian, this sturdy presence, a comforting and stable presence, someone you can count and depend upon, someone who will be there when the going gets tough and won't run off if you need him. Whereas here in the Seeker of Boons, we do have, the same kind of stable qualities, the same calmness, but this Seeker of Boons has, wandered off in the forest. They are looking for crystals or gems, and we do have the steadiness and the dependability part here in the card as well as part of the character traits. We have earthy and practical and patient, but adventurous in a modest way, which we don't really get here at all if Rachel Pollock is to be believed in her interpretation of the card. But yes, we do have the reassurances and the steadiness and the calmness of the cards, but here we see more of a guardian, someone steady to be there for you, whereas this one here seems more like, ready, steady, and stable in herself, kind of more like a seeker within herself, somebody who you can rely on, but it's still their own person, if you know what I mean. I don't know how to more explain what I'm thinking here. I hope you understand what I'm getting at and the differences that I see here between these two. This character here is out in the forest, searching for these gemstones. They are taking it slow, and they are well prepared with all their tools, and they are steady on the ground with the boots, and they are earthy and dependable and reliable, whereas this person here is basically standing guard. He's standing here protecting people. He's standing here giving them the protection and the dependability that they might need, but at a cost of perhaps himself. Very interesting actually, and I again, I am reminded of how much I love the Pentacle suit. But this was the end of this episode. Please let me know what you thought about the first two of the court cards, or the people cards in the Forest of Enchantment. We have the children and the seekers, the knights and the pages, and I really enjoyed this. But you guys, we're reaching the end of this series. The next episode we are going to be looking at the queens and kings or the weavers and the keepers in the Forest of Enchantment. I can't wait, and I'm definitely going to try and get this one out a bit more sooner than I did with this one. I will just cross my fingers that I will keep healthy enough so that I will be able to film. But anyway, thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Exploring the Enchanted Forest. And I hope you enjoyed it. Please take care of yourselves and be well, my friends. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye.